All right, if we can get everybody working towards their seats, we're going to get started in about 2 minutes. Feel free to dig into the desserts right off the bat. There is coffee in the back corner. And you'll want to arrange your seats to face the front. It'll be best for you. So 2-minute countdown, 2-minute warning. All right, go ahead and grab a seat. Friday night lights were aglow on this cool September evening. With dew on the grass, the pep band blaring, and the team warming up, this young athlete was poised and ready to take on the opponent that night. He was a senior and a captain and was ready for his senior season. Faith and FCA were an important part of his story, and he was thankful for a vibrant and encouraging school FCA huddle. He understood his need for a personal relationship with Christ. This young man learned through FCA that Christ came to sacrifice his life for a sinner like him. He surrendered his life to the Lord just 2 years prior, an emotional experience after a football game. That following summer, he went to FCA sports camp to sharpen his athletic skills and to learn more about following Jesus. The summer before this senior season, he grew in so many ways while at FCA leadership camp. This athlete's influence was great in his small school, and his faith was visible to his peers. Now, as he lay on the turf, as I lay on the turf, writhing in pain. Emotion, anxiety, concern, all hung heavy in the silence that filled that stadium. Injury diagnosis, torn ACL. My season was over, just like that. How would this injury change me? How would it impact my faith, my future, my influence? But God. But God, by the grace of God, this would be my opportunity to respond in faith, to glorify God through this setback. Ultimately, many good things would come from my injury, including speaking boldly about my faith at an FCA banquet when I was in high school, and how God changed my identity from that of an athlete to that of a child of God. This is my story. In addition to my family, there are two people here tonight that were key to me seeing my injury through the eyes of faith. Mr. Kruger, Mrs. Palser. We'll hear more about them later. Tonight, we are excited to share Northwest Wisconsin's Fellowship of Christian Athletes story. So I want to say welcome. My name is Tim Gunderson. I am the new area director as of like 2 months ago. I'm the new area director in Northwest Wisconsin. I want to welcome and thank you for coming to our fundraising dessert banquet tonight. We are so grateful for your support and encouragement. Please do not hesitate to eat the desserts at your table. Sometimes people are a little shy. The weight loss diet starts tomorrow, okay? There's coffee if you want in the back corner over there. It is there's no decaf, it's fully caffeinated, so just be aware. Tonight we will share the vision of FCA in our area and what the plans are for the future as God directs. Then we'll share FCA's current story in Northwest Wisconsin. What's happening right now? There are some amazing stories to tell. Also, toward the end of our program tonight, we will share, and I'm super excited for this, share the beginning story in Northwest Wisconsin. Mark Hull and a few others will share how we got started over 50 years ago. Many of you here tonight are the story behind the stories. You've given faithfully for years, allowing the gospel to be spread to athletes and coaches. God used you through the vehicle of FCA to impact his kingdom. We just thank you so much for partnering with us in that. Let's spend just a few minutes talking about our area. Here's an overview of our Northwest Wisconsin area. It's kind of blurry, but we have this whole area basically from Superior down to like Arcadia, almost to La Crosse, over east to Stanley or so, and then all the way to the border in Hudson. In our area, we have 4 staff. I'm the area director. I'm the one that oversees the whole area and the ministry in the whole area. I'm more of like the 30,000-foot view person. And we have 3 area representatives who you'll learn and get to meet them more later. They are more of our boots on the ground. They are assigned to specific campuses in our area. And so we have 3 staff that are assigned to about 45 or so schools. We have 18 counties we cover, 85 campuses, 1,200 plus coaches, and 54,000 plus students. But one mission: to lead every coach and athlete into a growing relationship with Jesus Christ and his church. It's a bold mission. And our 10-year target as an organization locally, or actually as an organization, is lofty. As you can see it up there, is a 1 empowered leader on every campus by 2032, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. But we believe God is leading it. So here it is. On each campus, FCA will have 1 athlete, coach, or volunteer that is empowered to disciple others through the ministry of FCA. Not only are we as staff discipling the leader in that school district typically, but they are discipling others in their sphere of influence. That's an empowered leader. I believe this mission can only happen through the power of the Holy Spirit moving through people. Our ministry pattern and principles are what we call E3. Engage in relationship. We equip with God's word or other FCA materials, and we empower these volunteers, allowing the volunteers to run the play of FCA in their circle of influence, ultimately impacting coaches and athletes. Our staff right now is engaging 175 volunteers in our area, equipping 65 and empowering 35. So we have 35 of our goal of 85. We have a ways to go, but we have 10 years to reach that goal. The numbers are good to measure and track progress, no doubt about it, but we can't lose sight of the changed life and the story behind each number. That's what we are targeting. So this is what we have. Now here is what we want. When we look at this map, we see only 4 FCA staff concentrated primarily in the Chippewa Valley. Most of us are in the Eau Claire area or Menominee. It can seem like too daunting of a task to reach the whole area. However, I feel empowered and excited for this next season of ministry in Northwest Wisconsin. With God, anything is possible. With ministry partners like yourselves, prayer warriors, like many of you as well, a solid advisory board, and the right butts in the right seats on our staff team, we anticipate great growth in the next 5 to 10 years. I believe we're in a prime time to hire new staff and grow. There are many believers searching for a career of significance. Maybe even someone here tonight. Or maybe you know someone that might be looking and searching for a career of significance. FCA offers that. We are hiring. Open for business. Our biggest needs are north of Highway 8. We don't have any staff up there anymore, north of Highway 8, but a lot of schools that have active ministry going that are unsupported. Our other need is more in the St. Croix area, Hudson, Richmond, that whole area over there is a huge need for us as well. We see tremendous opportunity to grow there. Whether we're full-time, part-time, females, males, entering retirement or entering the workforce, or anything in between. Midlife crisis, maybe that. Just kidding. Mine wasn't a midlife crisis, okay? It will take resources and people to accomplish this bold mission. There is great opportunity in front of us. We have a strong foundation of staff, board, volunteers, and donors to launch from. We really do. Been tremendous. And you'll see that tonight. You'll just experience the 50 years that we've had ministry going in this area. It's just a solid foundation to launch from. But as the Bible says in Luke 10:2, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest field. So that's our prayer. The first story I want to share tonight is our current ministry story. Here is what's happening right now. There are many aspects to FCA ministry, but tonight we will have a staff member interview people in key roles within our ministry. First, we'll have Andrew Draper coming up, highlighting athlete in camp ministry.
Tell you that there might be some people in here that are thankful that Tim Gunderson is on staff, but there is nobody more thankful than me. And he, big fan, huge fan. And then when he said boots on the ground, I'll tell you, I love having my boots on the ground. Because of kids like this, And I guess, Judah, you're kind of in between being a kid. I got to be an adult with you on the football field at Oliva Strum this year, which was awesome. But we have Claire Gibson, Judah Dunham here to share a little bit of the activity that we have going on with campus and camps. And this, I just absolutely love this, and it is fantastic to be able to have you guys here. Thank you for being willing to come and talk.
Yeah.
Tell us who you are, your school, grade, and sports, and then how you got involved with FCA.
Hi, I'm Claire Gibson. I'm a freshman at Memorial High School. I got involved with FCA when I was in 6th grade, starting at South. I just heard so much about it and different things with the sports aspect and all of that. I'm involved, I did cross country in the fall, and then I will do soccer in the spring. Let's see, what am I forgetting?
How did you get involved with FCA? You kind of told us, and we'll talk a lot more about that in a minute. So, Judah, what are you doing right now?
Well, hi, my name is Judah Dunham. I just graduated high school, so I'm no longer a student. But in high school, I played football, and I ran a little track. And then how I got involved? All right, sorry. My first time ever doing FCA was like way back in 1st grade at a junior camp. But then my first time actually doing things was a big sports camp when they had it in Decorah, Iowa in 8th grade.
For sure. So both of these two last summer, or last winter, it was cold, and the school districts were cold too, like not welcoming places. And we've got all these FCA huddles that are going, and last year, it seems like a long time ago now, but everything stopped for a while. And we didn't enjoy that, right? So, Claire, I had a little conversation with your parents here last year, and they're like, Claire, she really wants South FCA to come back. Tell me about what did we do?
So when COVID kind of hit and it got shut down, everyone really wanted the program back at the school because it was such a big thing. We kind of went to the principals and different things trying to get back. We originally started it in a teacher's room and discussed. We had a group of 5 students help lead and start it, create different things of the lessons we would do and how to get kids involved in different things and kind of just spreading the word about it and to get people involved in it. And we created a really great group of kids that came and got involved.
And a large number of those students are now freshmen at Memorial. Mm-hmm. The South Middle School Huddle is up and running and happening every other Wednesday. It's a ton of fun. And the freshman crew is the strongest freshman crew that I've ever seen at Memorial, mainly because of Claire and her leadership and getting that going again. Judah, we also connected last winter, and I was going and having to talk with administrators at Chi-High. There were some issues there that we had to work through. What did we do?
Well, our story's a little different, where she had a lot of people wanting to get it back started, and we had basically nobody. Just another FCA athlete and I. We really wanted to get it going because in former years we heard about how good the FCA was, and we wanted to bring what we had at camp and just the community that we had and what we were learning, and we wanted to bring it back to schools, but we weren't able to do it by ourselves. There's a lot of things we had to go through, so we reached out to Draper and some former Chippewa staff and some current staff, and it took quite some time to get going. But once we did, our first meeting, we had a total of 4 kids, I think, and by our last one, we had close to 30 kids going, and my brother is now a part of it, and he wants to lead it. He's a junior this year, and he's telling me that there's the same amount of kids going as last year, and they have what I hear is a really strong group still there.
It is so encouraging to show up to a school for an FCA huddle, but I always tell the kids that if they're willing to come, especially the ones that are early in the morning, and they're willing to show up at 6:45 in the morning and do pancakes or whatever, they're getting a little glimpse of what FCA is. But the sports camps in the summer are the full deal. It's like the highlight of our year, and I know that both of you guys have been impacted. I was impacted big time in 1998 when I was a high school freshman. I went to a camp, and now it's a bunch of years later, and I get to direct that camp. My favorite thing about being the director is I get to play favorites a little bit, and I get to bring coaches from this area. I get to spend a ton of scholarship money. We spent $16,000 from Northwest Wisconsin to get local kids to camp, and we got kids and huddle leaders like this coming to our camp as well. Tell me about camp.
Camp is just an amazing place. You get to meet so many new people. I started going to camp about 2 years ago, and going into it, you didn't really know much. I didn't know much about camp. I'd heard about it, and you went into it, and you meet the most amazing people. Your huddle leaders, the coaches, everyone's there to help you in your faith journey, and especially through your sports as well. And since that's such a big thing with FCA, having God come through you in your sports, and especially those coaches, your teammates, different people that want to help you through that as well.
And Judah got to experience it as a camper and then as a huddle leader. So speak to both of those.
Yeah, so I started going to camp, the bigger sports camp in 7th grade, and it was just one of those things for me where you look forward to like a holiday every year, but as soon as I would leave FCA camp, on the bus ride home, I was already thinking, tapping my foot, itching to go right back to camp. And the relationships that you have with your huddle leaders and the coaches and then the individual people that you interact with every day in your huddle, those are relationships that I still have outside of, first meeting them 8 years ago, and people that live in different states. And I think the relationships is one of the best parts of the camp. And they're all people that want to guide you to a relationship with Jesus, and it's like a perfect world there. And there was, and when I had my last year, there was nothing but tears coming out of my eyes, and I needed to be involved. I needed to stay. I wanted to give other students the same experience that I had, and so I wanted to be a huddle leader. And this last year, I was a huddle leader for my little group of 8th graders, and it was a really great experience.
For sure. So we do a junior sports camp here in the Eau Claire area, actually at Fall Creek. There's a lot of Fall Creek people here tonight. Ashley, Goodman-Mason, kind of a big deal in making that happen. And that's been going for 12 years now. It's a ton of fun. And those kids keep getting older, and then they get to come to the big sports camp, which was in Decorah, Iowa, and then after COVID, I had to move it to Northwestern in St. Paul, and this next year we blew out Northwestern. They can't handle us anymore. Now we have to move it to Bethel, so that's a lot of work, but it is so worth it to get more kids having this experience. And there's also a leadership camp that we run as well, and Judah's gotten to take part in that. There's no way that Claire's going to be able to escape me from making her go to that one as well. But it is absolutely a ton of fun. The one other Jesus party that we throw, and it's around here, and it happened about a month ago, is Fields of Faith. Claire, you've seen it. Judah, you spoke at it last year, and this year you had to catch a punt at it. Pretty cool. Tell me about that briefly.
Well, Fields of Faith is such an amazing thing because you get to hear everyone's stories and different things that they've struggled through and have seen faith through and had God led them through it. And the worship and everyone being there together is such an amazing thing from everywhere, different churches, different places. And it's a really great place to meet up and worship God.
Judah. I put you on the microphone last year, and you had me in tears. Why don't you wrap us up with your whatever you have to say about that, and then how FCA has impacted you personally, and then Claire, you can finish with how FCA has impacted you personally.
Yeah, actually, so it was at leadership camp when we have our huddles. I shared my testimony, and my huddle leader had somehow talked to Draper about my testimony and said that maybe it should be shared at Fields of Faith. And when Draper asked me to do it, I I don't like being on stage, if I'm going to be honest. So I really had to, I prayed for a long, long time that God would calm my nerves and I would be able to say what words he wanted me to say. And that ended up being one of the greatest moments of my life, though, sharing my testimony to a gym full of adults and students. Oh, sorry. You want how it impacted?
Yeah, you don't have to share the whole testimony.
Yeah.
But I know it impacted you big time. If you got anything more to say about that, let us know.
Yeah. Okay, so basically, FCA was the driving factor in helping me make a decision in the biggest choice of my life, whether I'm going to follow Jesus or not. And at the time, 2 years ago at one of the camps, I was going through a really tough time. But FCA is one of those things where it never leaves, and it keeps coming every year. And also, just the huddle leaders and the speakers, the camp flipped a switch in me, and I just restarted this fire for Jesus and completely changed my life around. And I found Jesus again, and I'm sticking with him, and yeah, that's what I got.
How about you, Claire?
I think how FCA has really impacted my life is my faith has been strong for a long time, but it's really grown my faith. And I think, too, that it's especially the speaking part, too. I think especially that, because I wouldn't have been up to speaking a long time ago without FCA. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing, guys. We are going to transition over to Coach's Ministry with Coach Lichty. And this is the other boots on the ground part of FCA that, man, I'm getting into it now that I'm actually a real grown-up and been coaching for over a decade myself. This is hugely impactful, a ton of fun to be a part of personally, and I'd love to be able to hear from these guys as well.
Hi, I'm Bob Lichty, and I work primarily with Coach's Ministry because I'm old and that's who I know better. As I spoke a little bit last year, my ministry is a little different in that I do a lot of Zooming. I only have one huddle that I actually meet in person with coaches. Otherwise, the rest are on Zoom, and I'm kind of everywhere. I have one huddle that goes all the way from Beloit to Mobridge, South Dakota. But what I found with Zoom is that with coaches, it's better to talk to them at 8, 9 at night when their kids are in bed and they don't have other things going on. And so it's really been going well. And so I've been with these guys for a couple of years. So a couple of things I want them to share with you and before I talk again. But anyway, this is Dave Crail. He is at the athletic director at River Falls. Brian Grochon is at Menominee. He's an assistant football coach. This is Mason Stocky's dad right here. That's what we have to look forward to. We used to be, Coach so-and-so, now we're their dad. And that's Andy Nearing. He is the head football coach at Blair Taylor. So first of all, I like Dave as athletic director. What do you see as the importance of having FCA and Christianity in your school?
Well, I think if I'm oversimplifying it, you can turn on the news. I think that it's important to have an organization that has a seat at the table. Within our public schools, there's a lot of conversations being had. A lot of those conversations are directed by our teachers and are genuine, great conversations. But there's a lot of things that are happening within our student bodies and conversations that our students are having amongst one another. And I think that Christianity today needs to be a part of that conversation, needs to have a seat at the table, and needs to be able to have some very direct influence on people within the public school buildings. And it should be a priority. I listened to the two students from Memorial and Chip, and they talked about how they brought that into into their buildings and how I believe it was described their building was dark, and it certainly doesn't seem like that's the case any longer. So it should be a priority within the public schools.
Okay, Brian.
Golf clap. Somebody was excited about it.
Brian's going to talk a little about huddle. Brian was kind of nominated. He was the last man standing, or the only adult left in the room when he had to take over the huddle. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I guess, to be honest with you, for a while there, I wasn't even sure, when it was first brought to me, I didn't feel like I could do it. I felt like I didn't know enough. And someone said something like, it's good to have an adult at the school to know that, hey, there are other Christians out there and that they're not alone, especially in the environment that society's kind of going. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. And so it's been a benefit just because I tell the kids, I'm learning just like you guys are, and I think gives it some authenticity. And I think the kids appreciate that, and it's good to see as the kids come in, they bring a lot of their own stuff, and they're able to share and grow, and it's just good to see that kind of growth happening in a public school setting.
Okay. Randy, you come from a camp family, so talk to us about FCA camp.
Well, it started with Nico. Basically went to confirmation, went to Sunday school, believed in God, but it wasn't real strong. And then he was in the FCA huddle at Menominee High School that Bob led, and Bob got him to go to camp. And it changed his life. It impacted the whole family because we went and picked him up, and he couldn't stop talking about it. And we kind of saw the final, closure that they had. We were traveling, going on vacation, and, talking to Nico. So the following year, I decided to, volunteer to become a football coach at the camp. And then I took Mason, who was a little guy at that time, along because the kids could go along. And my kids absolutely loved it. But you talk about what that camp did for them, and even myself, as far as the faith and how strong it got. It was incredible. So, hearing those guys talk about the camp, and I run an FCA huddle at the middle school, and, I'm telling them how special that camp is, but I think that's the key is if you can get them to that camp, it's a game changer to the point where, man, it just grows their faith. But as far as my kids, when they became seniors and juniors and they were getting up there, they had some success with football, and they were getting recruited. And 3-sport athletes, we'd get our summer calendar out, and it was them that said that FCA camp was #1 priority. And my wife and I, we changed our vacation because it didn't always fall on the right date. But that was a priority, and man, it grew. The faith that our family, it just grew and grew and grew, and we'd come home from that camp and we'd have great conversations. And later, Nico became a huddle leader in the camp, and 2 months before he was going to get married, he brought his bride-to-be to the camp, and that was her first experience, and they absolutely loved it. But they have a really strong faith to this day, and I credit it a lot to FCA, that camp especially.
Okay, thanks, Randy. Andy's coach at Blair Taylor. Andy's going to talk a little bit about the couples retreat and why they go.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to thank FCA for the opportunity to be able to go to a couples retreat. My wife and I have been married 21 years, June 1st. And through most of that, we've gone to couples retreats at different various places. And when we heard that FCA was going to have a couples retreat, we're like, that's perfect. We're in this together as a head coach. I've done this for 5 years. My wife and I sat down at our kitchen table and we prayed about it, thinking we would know what we were going to get into when I became a head coach. And through that process, we found that, being in it together is a perfect example of what my players need to see. I'm convinced that they will forget most of what I tell them. But I'm also convinced that they notice just about everything that I do, on and off the field. And that's probably a greater testimony than anything else that I could ever say to them, because when they get to see the way God defined marriage compared to the way our society wants to redefine things, they are looking for truth. They get lots of messages, we all know that. But what they can see, and they can compare it to what they hear, and if it matches up with what was a biblical marriage, then amen to that. That FCA wants to be able to impact kids through marriage. I think it's great.
Okay, hang on to that, Andy. We'll just bring you back. Okay, why do you get on a coach's call every week?
God knew I needed Bob. You know, when I started this and started coaching, I needed somebody that I could talk to that was safe and I could be honest at the same time. And I knew that what I would say wouldn't travel and go places that it didn't need to go. And it was my administrator at the time. Jeff Lichty was the guy that had been the superintendent. He'd been a football coach. I was his assistant when I got the job. I knew that I could talk to him. He knew what I was talking about. He understood that hey, this is what reality is, so get used to it. And he took a different job, and God knew I needed Bob. And I had a chance to talk to him and say, hey, what in the world am I supposed to do with this? And he's right on. He says, Andy, you know, this is the way it is. And you're going to have to be able to have godly principles, you know, and be a servant leader throughout this situation. And then each Wednesday night, I get a chance to hop on and I get to listen to these guys talk about what things are like at Menominee, as a program I've always admired, and listen to them and be able to learn. And it is so nice to be able to do that in a place that is godly men that have walked the walk and that I can learn from.
I think for me, it kind of goes way back to the first time that you had that coach's Bible study at the high school, and I was teaching there. And it was just, it grew my faith at that point. I wasn't one that, you know, I didn't read the Bible. And I know during that time we talked about, you know, reading it from cover to cover. When COVID hit, that's when I read it cover to cover. And it was incredible for me. But I think for me, it just makes me a better person. It keeps my faith with God and keeps that relationship fresh once a week. And just, you know, like learning and hearing these guys talk. And yeah, it's really good. But it makes me a better teacher. It makes me a better coach. Absolutely. Better husband, better dad, better grandpa now. So, you know, it helps with my patience, you know, just everything. But, and you know what, I teach at a middle school, FIAD right now, and going into my 31st year of teaching, and man, there's a lot of souls out there, especially and it's like, this helps me, you know, just our talks, and just how I can maybe relate to them and reach out to them and, you know, just hopefully help them, make a difference.
Yeah, from what these guys said, not a whole lot to add from that, but for me, it helped build my confidence with the kids, and knowing that I'm not going through this alone, and that they're the guys going through, you know, similar situations, and that as I'm learning from these guys and you, and that as my faith gets stronger, that I can kind of help the kids at the high school as they gain confidence in their faith, and it's just kind of like a cycle type deal.
So my situation's a little bit different. I don't meet in a coach's huddle. Bob and I meet one-on-one. And I would echo what Andy said in regards to just God knew that I needed Bob. I was a coach for 12 years, and I went from being in front and in charge of student athletes to now I'm in a position where I'm in front of and working directly with coaches who then work with those student athletes. And to say that there's not a cosmic shift in how that works would be it would be an understatement. And so I've needed some guidance in how to approach those relationships, how to maintain some level of relationship with our student athletes, but also change the way that I focus conversations. but it's important that I'm an example in that role. And I found that through our conversations, through our dialogue, I've been able to learn some things. It's been a remarkable journey. Bob was there throughout the process of some issues with the adoption of our daughter. So he's just kind of been right along with it. Having my kids in the background of the Zoom calls popping in with, "Hey, you're talking to Bob again," right? Those are good things. Those are really good things and really powerful things. And I think hopefully we'll continue to set a good example in my personal life as well as what we're trying to do professionally here at River Falls.
I hope we're filming this so I can show my wife, because she wonders what I do downstairs on Zoom all the time. The only other huddle I meet with is the Stout football team, and I've got our two leaders here tonight. And part of that, big part of that is these are future coaches. And these are people who are going to be going out in the field, so I feel it's a great opportunity to do with that. And I just go and listen. I just go and listen. Well, I buy snacks too. But I go and listen, and it's just great, these young men, what they're doing and how they're leading and where they're going. So the last thing I want to leave you with tonight is that, there's a place for you in FCA, okay? And I'm not talking just here, I'm talking this chair right here. Mm-hmm. This chair where I'm at. If you've got time and well, nobody has time, but just to work in one school, just do what I do, okay? We could sure use you. Mm-hmm. And I tell you what, it's really rewarding. So thank you very much.
Well, it is a pleasure to be up here and introduce you to Mr. Alan Chelmo. He is a coach, a teacher at Fall Creek High School. He also leads and advises the FCA huddle there. It's a huddle and school and a guy that I've really just grown to love over the last couple of years. My visits to Fall Creek are really special to me, and now it's kind of goofy because there'll be football athletes that here I'm showing up, and it's like an order form of energy drinks comes into my phone, and I'm walking in through the office with a backpack of energy drinks to drop off to football athletes in the lunchroom, and it's just a special, unique school. But man, it's just an honor to have Alan up here to talk about kind of what he does at Fall Creek. So thank you, Alan. Yeah, it's just a pleasure. But how did you get started leading the huddle at Fall Creek?
Well, I think it goes back. When I first started teaching, I started teaching in a little town called Winter. I don't know if anybody knows where that is, but it is winter all year round in Wisconsin. And up there, I saw how many kids needed the Lord, desperately needed the Lord. And I contacted Mark Hull and said, "Can you help do this?" And he came all the way up there several times and worked with kids and me to create an FCA huddle up there. And it was really, really cool. And it just, watching the FCA organization and how much they helped us, I'm like, I want to be a part of this. I want to see this change kids' lives. So then I got married to my lovely wife and moved down in this area and ended up getting a job in Fall Creek. And I asked them, that was one of my interview questions. I asked them, I said, "Do you have an FCA here?" And they said, "Yes, we do." And it was jumped right in from there. And I had privilege of meeting Marlene and Dick Kruger, and just an absolutely amazing group of people. And so watching FCA change kids' lives is what got me started really wanting to be a part of the organization.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before this, but the huddle at Fall Creek had been going a long time, even prior to you getting there. So why did you think it was important to continue to lead the huddle, to take over from Dick Kruger when he left? Talk a little bit about kind of the impact that the legacy of that huddle has had.
Well, I think there's a lot of amazing things in Fall Creek, and the legacy of watching so many kids come from parents who had already been in FCA has been absolutely amazing. Marlene got started. You'll hear more of that story today. But kids know, when you have a legacy, kids know that there's something really neat out there, and they want to be a part of that. And if it's a really good thing, and you can keep that hunger going generation after generation, that's a huge piece. And I think that the legacy piece is just the tip of the iceberg, and it leads to everything else. And a couple of things, I wrote a couple things down. I'd just like to just talk through these really quick. Legacy leads to character, because you know the people before you did amazing things. So you hear about their character and you want to be that. We have stories in the Bible over and over and over, you know, of these amazing people. And, you know, who wouldn't want to be a Gideon? Who wouldn't want to be, you know, one of those great warriors of the faith? And so that's a huge piece of it. The other one in Fall Creek is the community. We've been so supported by the community in all kinds of things. And that plays a huge piece in legacy. Over and over again, there have been community members that say, hey, can I help with this? Can we do this to be a part of it? And that's tremendous. And then, and that leads to the last part, which is the longevity. And it's generation after generation after generation, because they hear about the great things. And so this is, I asked if I could have a audience participation on this one. How many kids out there did your parents, were they in FCA? And how many parents are your kids in FCA? So this is everything from middle school to high school, even college. They have a couple college groups, camp. How many of you guys have been a part of that? So if you have a parent who's been involved in FCA, or parents, you have kids who are involved in FCA, and you have also, would you please stand up? Can everybody give these guys a round of applause?
That's so neat to see. That's awesome. We have a couple more minutes, but what's been a highlight for you as you've led the FCA huddle over the years? What's been one highlight that sticks out to you about Fall Creek FCA?
Just watching lives change. And I guess the biggest picture of that, I had a student come and talk to me, ran into them in a store, and they came back to talk to me later on, before I left the store. And they had only come to FCA a couple times, but their last question to me was, is FCA still going? And I said, well, absolutely. You know, we're still going to do this. Mm-hmm. And this kid just opened up and just shared that was something that has always been in their heart. They only came a couple times, but they learned about the Lord, and it was always the Lord put that call in their heart, and they just kept coming back over and over and over to that. And so we had a long discussion, and this young man is involved in a youth group now, and he's making huge steps. So to me, that's what it's about. It's about planting those seeds that years later that our kids are going to go back to.
Yeah, one thing that stuck out to me, FCA likes to use the phrase ministry by multiplication. How are we extrapolating this out? And I thought it was really neat. Last Thursday, the Fall Creek FCA huddle packed shoeboxes for Operation Christmas Child. And I thought that was really neat to have 15, 20 or so high school students that would bring supplies to pack in shoeboxes for Operation Christmas Child. And even they probably not thinking like, ooh, I'm multiplying the ministry at FCA. Maybe they are. Maybe Alan's got them all trained on buzzwords. But it was really neat to see their heart of service, but also knowing that the gospel goes out with those shoe boxes. I thought that was really neat as a huddle. Did we touch on everything? Coach, we'll do this last one. We don't have our red card up yet, so we can keep talking. As a coach at Fall Creek, we've touched on huddles and camps, and Bob does coach's ministry. But as a coach, talk to the importance of FCA in your own coaching life and how you've seen impact kind of the sports community at Fall Creek.
I think that goes back to our kids and our teachers and our staff, all mixed together. Our kids will pray before athletic events, all on their own. They will talk to each other about their relationship with the Lord, and our staff and coaches have been just a tremendous, I don't know how to word that, but they completely open and saying, go ahead and do that. And that's a really, really cool thing. As a coach, it's just, we spend a lot of time with kids. My wife knows that more than anybody. But to see these kids in a whole different place, to see them, when you're an athlete, you give everything you have, your time, your energy, every piece of you goes into everything you do every day. And so to be a part of that with these kids, you become a part of their life. And there's no greater honor as a teacher or as a coach to be a part of a kid's life and to be able to speak into that and to hear them take their own steps of faith and walk that out. There's nothing more amazing as a coach and teacher than that.
Well, Alan, you're doing incredible things for the Lord at Fall Creek. Thursdays are just a blessing for me to hang out with you guys. Down over there? Over there? I don't know. So thank you for...
I just have to say this one thing about Johnny P. When he shows up, it's a party. He comes walking into school, and kids come from all over, and I'm not joking. They come from all over, and they're yelling his name from one side of the school to the other. So these are the kind of folks that work for FCA, because these kids love to see him a lot more than they love to see me. I don't
think that's true. I bribe them with energy drinks, though, Alan. The afternoon classes really love me when the teachers, I show up, I'm like, here's an energy drink.
Food is the path to every kid's heart.
Yes. So thank you. But now it is my pleasure to introduce, once again, our area director, Tim Gunderson, and our board chairwoman, Ashley Goodman-Mason.
Perfect. There's definitely a strong thread of Fall Creek High School and Fall Creek legacy tonight, which is amazing because I'm from Fall Creek. Ashley's from Fall Creek. I just want to recognize the next portion here is the board. We have an advisory board. I want to recognize them tonight because they help put this thing on. They do such great work, and they usually are in the background. They don't want to be up front, but I do want to recognize them. Mary Grass Camp, if you wouldn't mind standing up. Sandy Sorensen, where you at? There you go. Danny Schrader, where are you at? Danny, and then Ashley's our board chair. Give him a round of applause. All right, I just want to spend a few minutes highlighting our board position, basically another avenue that volunteers get involved in FCA. And so Ashley Goodman-Mason is our board chair. And so tell us a little bit about your story and then more about what the chair role is for you.
Sure. So I was thinking about tonight and that we're looking at 50 years of FCA and just the impact it has had on our community. And I started thinking, wow, FCA has been a big part of my life for many years. So just going to quickly walk you through that. FCA started for me as a freshman in Fall Creek. I know we've heard that a lot tonight. And it all started with some amazing people like Mrs. Palser and Mr. Kruger that were running our huddles, and some seniors that were bold to say, hey, freshmen, you need to come Thursday morning to FCA. And Tim Gunderson was one of those people. So we thought, why not? Let's check it out. And FCA became a huge change in my faith. I came from a very faithful home, a home of prayer. We believed in God, we believed in Jesus, but there was the one part that just wasn't overly talked about, was that personal relationship. And FCA is where I finally got to learn about that, and that God was after my heart, and he wanted to see me use my platform as an athlete to change others and just be there to show that. So fast forward then, I become a teacher. Weird, because I had some amazing teachers. And I was in Augusta, and we started a huddle there. And it was small to begin, and one of my huddle girls is in the crowd right now too, so it's awesome. But it started small, and they didn't want anything to do with leading. And then slowly it was, maybe we'll make breakfast this week, or we'll plan the game this week. And by the end of that first year, they were leading the lessons, and they were reading the word to their classmates and inviting people, and so we grew in Augusta. At that same time, I got invited to coach at, we call it in our family, Big Kid Camp, which is camp down in Iowa. And we call it that because I had a 2-year-old that was my sidekick and went everywhere with me. I was a single mom. So my first year coaching at that camp, I was nervous because I thought, how am I going to coach, go to all these sessions, and take care of my son? Within like the first hour of being at camp, people are like, you got that session? We'll bring Ira to dinner, so don't worry about it. So there's just that family community so that I could pour into my athletes, and I knew my son was also being poured into. And now he's a camper, so comes full circle on you. And then I became a principal, so coaching stopped, teaching stopped. And I thought, where do I fit now in FCA? Because FCA is huge, and it's a big part of my story. Now it's becoming a part of my son's faith journey, and what does that look like? And then I got invited, hey, you want to be on a board? And I thought, well, I'm on a hockey board, and I take really good notes, so I might join a board. So that's where I'm serving now, and FCA is on the board.
But you do way more than just, take notes.
But I'm good at it, right?
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you do for the board.
So I would say getting on the board, my eyes were really opened because as a coach, as a huddle leader, I always felt supported. I went to camp, everything ran smoothly. The ranch in Decorah was amazing, so we had a great spot to be. If I needed Bibles, Andrew Draper's like, yep, Jonny and I are on our way to Augusta, we'll be there, we'll lead a lesson. I always felt supported. The part I didn't know was happening behind the scenes and what was supporting these staff members in order to be, like we said, boots on the ground and actually getting to the coaches and then our coaches getting to their athletes. And I didn't know that. And so my eyes were really opened that we have a behind the scenes job to do. And not a lot of people know what we do. And we're learning and growing as a board a lot in this last year. But our biggest thing is just to support our staff so that they can focus on the most important part of the ministry. And that's being in the schools and being with coaches and being with athletes. So.
That's great. Yeah, it is definitely a working board, and we put you to work for sure, but it is an extension of our staff and really creates a little bit more efficiency in our staff. So what would you say, we are looking for board members, so if you think that might be something that you want to look into, what would you say to someone that might be considering, hey, I want to get involved in FCA, but I'm not a coach, or I'm not in the school system, or whatever. How might you answer that?
So I would say that the board's a great place to start. We are looking, but it's also a place that I know if we don't do our job well for Tim, then Tim can't do his job well for all of our other reps in the area, and then it feeds into our coaches, and then it feeds into our athletes. So if you want to just be a place that is behind the scenes helping so that their job can be successful and the ministry goes on and the word is spread, don't hesitate. And I think we've talked about even if you want to come watch a board meeting, we're great at letting you pilot things and seeing, but we'll hook you. So.
All right, that's great. Anything else you want to say? No? Okay. All right, thank you. Man, it was so good to hear those stories. I serve such a great staff. Those guys, those men are doing fantastic work to extend the gospel. The board that we have is behind us and supporting that, but extend the gospel into the realm of sport. There are many more stories in our area that we could share, but these are signs of God working through his people. Now, before we get into our 50-year history tonight, this is the time in our program where I'll share our needs. What we have and what we want has been shared. Now I'll ask you, would you like to partner with us to fulfill those needs? As you saw earlier, our area is doing great ministry with the capacity we have. Lives have been changed and continue to be changed. God is leading our ministry. As a local ministry, we have asked God, how would you like us to move forward? We believe there are 2 areas that he is asking us to present to you to consider tonight. There are other ways to support the ministry as we've shared tonight, but tonight I'll give you 2. We rely on our financial partners to grow and expand our ministry. The first area of need tonight is an extra $2,500 in automatic monthly partners. These are people that give on a monthly basis. Our automatic partners are our home team. It is the financial foundation for our ministry. FCA continuing to be healthy as a ministry starts with strong home teams. Each staff member that you saw up here is supported and has its own home team. Please consider increasing your monthly donation if you already give, or to start giving to our staff members tonight. So that's the automatic monthly partners, foundation for us as a ministry. The second area of need, though, is in the growth aspect. I'm seeking an extra $20,000 of seed money tonight to expand our reach through staff hiring. The seed money would be used to help new staff member come on our team faster and get into ministry quicker. If you are considering a one-time gift or an end-of-year donation, please consider this money into our development fund. On your table tonight is the Join the Team commitment card. It's inside your program. Pull that out for me. Take a look at it. Let's spend the next 4 minutes in quiet as we pray and ask God what role He wants us to play in the FCA mission. It's pretty self-explanatory, pretty easy to fill out. During the time when you're done filling it out or you're done with it, you can put it in the envelope in the middle of your tables. If you're ready to give, go ahead and fill out the form. If you need more time, please pray. Ask God. We're asking that you ask Him in the next 4 minutes, or take home if you need it. If I didn't have an FCA staff member like Mark Hull, a volunteer FCA huddle leader like Marlene Palser and Dick Kruger, as well as other faithful leaders within FCA who impacted my story, I would still be searching for my identity and my worth within sports. FCA desires to reach more coaches and more athletes for the gospel. Will you join our team to impact the next coach or athlete and help us reach our 10-year target? Please consider. Thank you. Take the next 4 minutes, please.
50 years in about 15 minutes. Here we go. As I was getting ready for tonight and thinking about the 50 years, I was starting to actually get a little discouraged as I looked at that time. And my wife, who's a truth teller and an encourager, as I was looking in the mirror, I said, as I look in the mirror, I see somebody who's getting older, who's losing his hair, who's getting wrinkles, and kind of looked and looking for something here. Being a truth teller and an encourager, she just looked at me and said, well, at least your eyesight's darn near perfect. And so that's a lot of time. And it goes like this. We're going to go back and we're going to talk in brief about what we call the life cycle of the dream. Life cycle of a dream is when it's first survival, when you can only see it, or somebody sees it, but only with their eyes closed. And then you go to stability, where you can start to see it with your eyes open. You're not sure yet, but you can start to see it. Then you go to success, where other people can see it and want to join. But significance is when you now get to see it through the eyes of others. And that's what this day has been so far for me, is being able now to see it through the eyes of others. But let's go back to the survival mode, when somebody sees it but with their eyes closed. The first person to see it up in this area was Jake Boostrom. Jake saw it. Jake, put your hand up. Jake saw it more than 50 years ago. And Denny, you were one of the beneficiaries of the first person who could see it but with their eyes closed. Tell us a story about that.
Okay, first I'm going to say this. She said, look out at this group. And I said, yes. In 1970 in the spring, I remember Jake had a group of us met. He was going to get us to go to a camp. And there were about 5 kids and their parents. And that was the group. That's how this started, actually. Jake had me, let me get to an FCA camp between my junior and senior year in high school. It was at that I made a commitment. I went there, like so many people I've heard say, I went there to see my gods. I came away knowing they're God. And that's been an impact on my life ever since. When we got back from that, I'll keep this all short, but we got back from that and Jake started a weekly study with a group of us. And not long into that, he said, you know what? He said, here, we're going to study in Acts with Paul in front of King Agrippa. And he's, so we looked through that and he said, and he's sharing his faith story and you need to be able to do that. So he kind of coached us through writing out our own faith story. And he said, what'd be really interesting if we recorded that so you could hear it. And I go, cool idea. So we recorded. A week or so later, I lived in Knapp, went to high school in Menominee. I come in from Knapp into Menominee after a Friday night game. I'm in Coffin's store in town, and somebody comes up and says, I heard you on the radio last night. And I go, no, I wasn't on the radio. They said, yeah, at halftime you were on the radio. I go, no, I was in the locker room. They said, no, you shared that testimony you did all this. I go, oh my gosh, now everybody knows. And it was, and I thank you, Jake, for having your eyes closed and moving ahead with that, because that kept me accountable at a time where I didn't have enough sense to do that. And I truly appreciate that. Throughout my time at Stout, I would get phone calls from Jake, and he had, that first year he had me stand up to give a testimony in front of me. He did this to a 16-year-old kid, but he had me in front of the Luther College band camp, so we have our whole auditorium full of people, and share a testimony. And I think I put 100 miles on my shoes in that podium up there just trying to share my testimony. But what he would do regularly throughout my time at Stout, I'd get a phone call and he said, Nellie, I go, yeah, Jake, what? He says, you believe in free speech? I'd say, yeah. He says, good, you're giving one next week. and I would be off talking to some father-son banquet or something. So I thank you, Jake. Appreciate it.
That's when somebody could see it, but only with their eyes closed, and move forward. Well, from that, a while later, I get to come on staff with FCA, and we're still in survival mode. Financially, we're in survival mode. Ministry-wise, survival mode. But we started to see some things, and there started to be some success. And other people now started to see, well, at least stability. We now know what we're doing. Well, Marlene, that was when you reminded me, because I didn't remember, that you called me.
I did.
Tell this story.
First of all, thank you to you people that led the way. You paved it for us and made it so easy for the rest of us. But many years ago, I moved up to the high school to teach, and I was given the freshman study hall. And that's not your first choice that you want to supervise. But I know why God put me there, and I see everything at FCA as a full circle of answered prayer. So there I am, first day with the freshmen, and the cutest little girl comes up and kneels by my desk and says, I heard you're a Christian, is that true? And I said, it is. And she said, oh, I've been praying for you since I was a little girl. And I said, what? She said, yeah, I need a Christian teacher that will pray with me at noon and pray for this school. Well, she was my answered prayer. And we started meeting at noon in my room and praying for Fall Creek. And we wanted to start a Bible study or a prayer group, and seemed to just keep meeting with dead ends, and nothing was legal, and it couldn't happen. And then we heard about FCA, that they had already done all the legalities, and that you could meet and you could pray, and it could be student-led. So we found out about this man named Mark Hall, and we were so excited. And we called him and said, do you think you could start a huddle group at Fall Creek? And he laughed out loud and said, I was just getting ready to call all the small schools and see if anyone would be interested. So, little girl answered prayer for a man. We started our huddle group, and it was a little girl who wasn't an athlete and a female teacher. And that wasn't real inviting to a lot of big football players. And she played the French horn. You know, it just, we weren't doing it. And so we started praying for a male to come and co-lead. And I have to put this little story into second, that there was a man that walked his kids to school every day, and the cheerleaders that I work with called him the cute man. Oh, look, there's that cute man. I had no idea who he was. I had no idea that he was a Christian, just that he was really cute. And so Kim and I kept praying and praying for a man. I asked many male coaches, just didn't work with their schedules, or no, they didn't really think FCA was a good thing. And we kept praying and kept praying. And I'm coming down the hall one day, and here comes cute man. His name is Dick Krieger. And he said, are you Marlene Palser? And I said, yeah. And he said, I don't want to intrude, or I don't want to go where I shouldn't go, but I was just wondering if you would like help leading the FCA huddle group. Another answered prayer, okay? And it just started to grow. Dick would meet in the weight room with the guys. I mean, it just started to grow and grow. And I can remember one Thursday morning, we had half the school interested, curious, what were we doing in there? And I would just see answered prayer and answered prayer. Young men like Tim Gunderson, answered prayer. And so I look back now, and hindsight, you can just see the perfect circle of God leading you and being with you and answering your prayers. And look what we have. I left, Chelmo came on, answered prayer. Look at people tonight, Tim Gunderson, Ashley Mason. God is so faithful. Never give up. We have come the full circle from high school kids joining the huddle group to now leading FCA. God is so good. Thank you, Mark, for everything you did for us.
It's been an honor. Thank you. Jake was in the body parts, Jake was the eyes of this. For a good length of time, I became the face of it. For better or worse, I was the face of it. But Bush Preston represents the heart of it. And it has been such an honor. Butch, as a teacher and a coach, a consummate servant and a supporter, he and his wife were the first ones to invite us into their home. When Butch retired, and this is, we're starting to think about how can we utilize these coaches that are having an impact. When he retired, I sat down with him and I said, Butch, I know a lot of people retire because they want to play golf so badly. You just play golf so badly. I just know you didn't retire for that. So you joined us in that journey. Those were the halcyon days of this ministry. I have, for now, the privilege of going internationally. I've, in the last 6 years, done workshops in 6 continents in 59 different countries, but there's still no place like home. And you represented that. And I remember Draper and I would sit in the office on Tuesdays and wait for you to come in after your appointments just to tell us all the God stories that were there. What great days that was. What do you remember from that, just in general, and in any specific kind of story that was impacting for you?
Well, I could say a lot of things, but one of the things I want to say, there was a group of us before there was any FCA staff in the state of Wisconsin, and we used to get we had a Bible study that went here in Eau Claire, went on at the YMCA, and a group of us would get in a car, and yearly we would go to Minneapolis because they had FCA in the metro area. And we, on our way there and back and at our Bible studies, would pray for someone, a staff member. And then we got a part-time staff member, but they put him in Milwaukee, where there wasn't any FCA, and we were still meeting in Eau Claire, and so we continued to pray, and finally, after we got a staff person in Wisconsin full-time, we still didn't have anybody in Eau Claire. And so anyway, we continued to pray, and finally we heard about this guy who was somewhere in the Far East, and we didn't know exactly what he was doing, but he was directing a camp for refugees. And it was Mark Hull. And I thought, for crying out loud, FCA is looking for a guy to come here to Eau Claire. What is a missionary in the Far East? How is he going to help us? Take a look. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Take a look. And Mark came here, and boy, did things begin to happen. But you want me to tell me one story, right? You tell a story, my friend. You're a good story. He was right. I taught 35 years in the public schools in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and I had coached and then I retired, and I did the retirement thing. I was going to play golf one day and fish the next. Well, I developed a bad back, and I wasn't a good golfer anyway to begin with, so I thought, scratch that golf. And the fish, when it got hot, didn't bite. And so he invited me for coffee one day and said, Butch, he said, I've seen you play golf, and if you're as good a fisherman as you are a golfer, I think you should think about joining our staff. And so I did. And I want to tell you, if you don't remember anything else, those 12 years after I retired from teaching and coaching were the best years of my life. And I want to tell you one story, and I'll do this as quickly as I can. My responsibility was high school and junior high school huddles. And Jamie is here tonight, one of our great college kids that taught our middle school huddles. And he was long gone by then, but so I had several. And anyway, one day in the spring of the year, I went over to DeLong Junior High School and was ready to watch or attend my last huddle at that school for the school year. And the person who was our staff huddle leader, Tom Kidd, pulled me aside and said, Butch, he said, we've got a student here that wants to say a few words to the huddle tonight. And I said, well, we usually don't do that. I have to hear what they're going to say first because you never know what junior high kid's going to say. And he said, well, she's told me the story and she needs to talk to the kids. She wants to talk to the kids. And so anyway, she began to talk softly. And she said, I was a huddle leader last year as a 7th grader. And she said, at the end of the year, you probably noticed that I didn't come to huddle anymore. And I had noticed that, but I thought, well, kids get busy in the spring. And so anyway, she said, I was depressed. And she said, no one knew it. And she said, the depression got so dark, she said, I began to cut myself. And she said I quit coming to huddle because she said I was wearing long sleeves and I didn't want anybody to know what I was doing. And she said the darkness deepened, and she said pretty quick my parents noticed, and they got me to a doctor and to a counselor, and she said I got medications, and for a while it was better. But she said that when school ended and I didn't have friends to talk to, and I was really pretty much alone, she said the darkness got deeper and the depression also. And so she said, I did a little research on the internet, and I was taking medication then, and she said I found out what amount of medications I'd have to take so I wouldn't have to wake up in the morning. And we were sitting in this huddle. It was a circle of kids. I can't remember whether it was a dozen or 20, but it was a good number. And she said I waited one night when I knew my parents were going to be gone for a couple hours. And she said I got that pill bottle out and I counted out just the amount I needed so that I knew I wouldn't wake up and no one could revive me. And she said I waited an hour to make sure that they weren't going to come back, that they hadn't forgotten something. And she said then I got the pills out and counted them out on the counter. And she said I took my first pill and I was ready to pop it in my mouth. I'd drawn the water. And she said it was like God turned on a movie camera. And she said I saw you sitting in a circle just like we're sitting, and I could see your faces. And she said I couldn't take that first pill. And she said I put the pills back in the bottle, and she said closed up the medicine cabinet, waited for my parents to come home, and she said I told them. And she said they got me more help. And she looked at the kids and smiled, and Tom and I, and she said, I'm so glad. She said, I didn't do that. But she said it was the picture of your faces sitting in the circle, and I knew how disappointed you would be in me and how that would hurt my parents. And I'm so glad I didn't do that, she said, because it's the best year I've ever had as an 8th grader. One life. I'm not going to sit here and say that happened often. But in 12 years, even if it just happened once, that was just the importance of FCA, wasn't it?
Survival, stability, success, but you all represent the significance. And so thank you for allowing us to be a part of this journey, but with your support and your encouragement. Yeah.
Just one thing, I retired a number of years ago, do a lot of subbing. A few weeks ago, a kid came into class and he goes, you're Dennis Nelson, you the guy that used to teach and coach here and you ran that FCA group? He says, yeah. He says, my mom talks about that group all the time, so influence some of those folks. Help them out, it has a great impact.
Well, thank you.
Could I say one more word?
Butch, I don't know how you say one more word.
Okay, I'm going to say one more word. I want you to know how my life has been impacted by one man, Mark Hull. And I can remember, you made a reference to this earlier tonight, sparked my memory. I can remember I was on the board of directors, I was still teaching and coaching. We met, the board met out at WWIB, and Mark got up and said, gentlemen, we were all men then on that board. He said, we've got finances for 1 month, and then we're done. And he said, we need to pray, and we need to pray much, but he said, I have no second option. And we prayed. That was one time I wished I would have been a millionaire, but I wasn't. Neither were most of the rest of the guys on that board. But had Mark not challenged us to pray, and we prayed, and then all at once things began to happen, and I'm sure it was probably because of Mark. And another time, I remember being in a meeting with Mark, and this is all now I'm going to say. I know Mark, I know. I come a long way to do this. So I'm going to finish.
I couldn't control you then, I can't control you now.
And I know he doesn't want me to do this, but I'm going to anyway. And he said, and I was on staff then, and we had a regional meeting. It was Wisconsin, and it was Michigan, and it was Illinois. And FCA, as an organization, was going to scrap summer camp. And Mark got up in a meeting, I think we were in maybe the Dells, but I'm not really sure about that, and said, the problem is not with camp. The enrollments are declining and we're not making any money, we're going in the hole. But he said, it's not the concept that's wrong, it's the way the camps are being run. And he basically laid out a simple plan and said, if we do that, we'd make money and bring more kids to camp. And I don't know how the word got down to Kansas City, which was the headquarters, and still is, of FCA. But they were ready to scrap camps nationally, cut them and eliminate them. And Mark's influence in his idea filtered all the way down to Kansas City. I'm positive of that. And FCA decided to keep camps. And there have been thousands and thousands and thousands of lives impacted because of one guy. He's sitting on stage with me, and he will probably won't admit it, but it's the truth.
Thank you all. Tim, why didn't you come up? It wasn't quite like that, but we did do a lot of rechange. Thank you so much, as you represent all that has been so good. And as Tim wraps this up, I want to remind you that in many ways, when we make an appeal to everyone, it really sometimes feels like an appeal to no one. And so we want to make this appeal to each one of you. Find a place involved in this ministry. And the financial support is one of those key ones. Mm-hmm. This has been an amazing thing to now see it through the eyes of others. It is way beyond anything that I would ever seen. And Tim, you represent a sense of significance for me, because now I get to see it through your eyes. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, as we wrap up, what a beautiful night. So good to see some of that. Two things I want to do. First is we have a $500 gift card from Shields we're giving away, and it is from somebody that signed up before November 1st. So a little drum roll, please, a little drum roll. All right, it is Greg Stewart. Is he here? Greg. Yeah, we got a winner. Awesome. I'll bring it to you. So I want to celebrate and recognize our generous sponsors for this banquet. You can see them in our programs tonight, but special thanks to our team captains, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Mike and Julie Frazier, the Haven Church, Stifle Group, and Scott and Sherry Uckel. Also, there are many other current and former coaches, huddle leaders, and other volunteers in our room tonight. So thank you, especially to those that set the foundation for us in FCA over 50 years ago. May we be celebrating in another 50 years what we're doing right now. Remember that. Thank you. Have a good night.